everyone. Thank you for joining us at noon for our Remembering MLK webinar. I am the person of Pastor Scott Anquay, the Policy Director for Faith in Place. And today I have with me one of our staff members, Reverend Cindy Shepard, from our downstate director, or actually our Central Illinois director for outreach. And then also today we have a very special guest, that in the person of Reverend Michael Malcom. And he is the director of the Interfaith Power of Light in Alabama, and also a lead voice for the People's Justice Council. And so today we're going to have some conversation around environmental justice and how it relates to Dr. King and his vision, as well as his dream. And so before we do that, I just want to introduce you to our organization, Faith in Place. And so I'm going to turn it over to our Reverend Cindy Shepard at this time.
Thank you, Pastor Anquay. At Faith in Place is the Illinois affiliate for the Interfaith Power and Light, with which Reverend Malcom is also associated in Alabama. We are a multi-faith organization, and our vision is that diverse people of all faiths will lead the environmental movement towards justice. So our mission statement is fairly simple, that Faith in Place empowers Illinois people of all faiths to be leaders in caring for the earth, and by providing resources to educate, connect, and advocate as we build healthier communities together. So I'm glad to be with you here today, and excited to hear what we're going to be hearing from one another. Katie, you can give me the next slide. Oh, it's blank. We wanted to start with a video that has some historical footage from the March on Washington, D.C. from the early 60s. I think that I talked Pastor Anquay into letting me be on this call because I'm the only one on the call that's old enough to actually remember this from real life. I was a child, and we want to show this to you because it just gives us a wonderful way to celebrate Martin Luther King, to empower people of faith to be part and share in his legacy. And also because it can help us, I think, to start to think about how to connect the dots between the struggle of the 1960s and the struggle of the 2020s as we continue to work for justice. What I love about this video is that it shows so many ordinary people and really captures the way Dr. Martin Luther King was able to inspire ordinary people, to engage them in the central struggle for justice of that day, and empower them to really make a difference, to change the society that we live in and bring it a little bit closer to the beloved community that he envisioned. I invite you to just watch the rest of it and enjoy.
Thank you, Cindy, for sharing that video. When we think of Dr. King and his impact on justice and the movement towards justice, we see that there were so many people that were impacted and wanted to be there in Washington, D.C., and share in his dream and share in the struggle for justice. And so one of our special guest today, actually, Reverend Michael Malcolm, is definitely astute in the area of justice and the fight for justice. And so I'm just going to pull you in real quick, Reverend Michael, and have you reflect on what you just saw.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Rep. And let me first say thank you all for inviting me. Thank you to those who have shown up to listen, as well as those who have registered that will listen later. What I saw in that video, um, and what I really thought, I thought about the fact that everyday people were impacted and empowered to or motivated to action. And where hope was, it gave way to courage, and people got out and did something about it. I also saw, and what really resonated in my mind in the real sense was uh, the same thing that got Jesus killed was the same thing that got Dr. King killed. And what I saw again, and that was everyday people were empowered or impacted and empowered or motivated to get out and do something. And that disturbs the status quo. And that's dangerous. But that's the work we're called to as those who are leaders in faith.
Great, thank you. Yes, indeed. So we have a question for the a poll that we'd like you to take. Do you connect Dr. King's work with environmental justice? And so you can start polling and see where we're at. Mm-hmm.
Oh, the answers are coming in.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I didn't know how this would go. I'm surprised that 3/4 of people did connect those two things.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I'm actually surprised, but not surprised at those who can't connect it. Uh, in light of the fact that Dr. King actually died in the process of doing a march for environmental justice with the trash workers in Memphis. So it's funny that we've disconnected, or better yet, society has disconnected us so much from our environmental stewardship that we can't make the correlation, even when it's clear of what he was actually going there to do, which was labor laws and being able to get workers fair wages or livable wages, uh, and dealing with poverty, which are all environmental injustices.
Yeah.
I think the environmental movement just made a mistake when it let itself be pigeonholed as just for, saving the polar bears. That's not the environmental movement. Yeah,
Well, I also believe that in itself is intentional. I think that by separating environmental justice from environmentalism, they were able to separate the resources from those who really were impacted. And that in
Amen.
itself is an injustice. And we really have to look at this environmental space and honestly do some house cleaning as we're reaching out and we're pointing our fingers out, we also have to do like we've done or like we hadn't done as a society, and look at our own selves and our own institutions and ensure that we root out white supremacy out of those institutions as well.
Amen. Thank you, Dr. Malcolm.
So on that question, how does Dr. King's legacy relate to the work of environmental justice? Are we comfortable with making the connection, or is there some things that we can be doing to further connection? Because 28% of the people that were polled did not make the connection.
Yeah, so I mean, for myself, I think that again, we've not done a good job. I know I'm at Faith in Place, so and I know that your target audience are communities of faith and faith leaders. So let me speak specifically to my fellow colleagues in faith and say, hey, we have not done a good job by connecting the dots. We have done our retreats and we have taken people out in nature and we've looked at the beauty of nature, and we've even talked about the beauty of nature while looking at it from a recreational standpoint. But we hadn't looked at the fact that everybody doesn't have the luxury of enjoying the same thing that you have. How, we'll go into wooded lands, which are good, and talk about God's beauty, or the Creator's beauty, but yet and still we won't talk about those that are created and our inequities in society. So we're imbalanced, and we've got some house cleaning to do as well.
Good point. When you reflect on the words of Dr. King's speech, when he said that in 1963, when he preached the I Have a Dream speech, he said, it's obvious today that America has defaulted on its promissory note insofar as her citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check, a check which has come back marked insufficient funds. So when you think about that, he went on to say, we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. And so we have come to cash this check, a check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice. And so when we resonate on those words, are we ourselves perpetuating the bad check? Or are we able to fix and write a check that's meaningful when it comes to justice, this justice work?
I want to answer your question, but I think I need clarity. Who is the we?
Well, we as a society, when we think about the work that we're doing, there's always some pushback to the work we're doing. I think you hit the hammer or the nail on the head when you said that we also have to do a reflective look at ourselves to see if the work that we're doing is actually penetrating or going in the right direction, because there are some systems in place that prevents justice from going forward, even in its environmental realm. So that's the we. The we is the.
I got you. And I'd have to return the question and say, has anything changed? Have we seen progress collectively? And let me pause parenthetically here and say, exceptionalism, and in particular, Black exceptionalism, is not collective liberation. So collectively, has anything changed? And if I have to look at it, I'd say no. But let me go a step further and let's look at the language that Dr. King was using. Dr. King was using economical language because Dr. King understood that racism is economical.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
That's
so he
what
was using economical language. I'm sorry, go ahead,
I
Rick.
just I want to agree with you. Thank you so much for that, for bringing that up. And when I think about environmental justice and Dr. King's legacy, I started exactly the same place that you did. The fact that he was in Memphis, where he was assassinated, because he was there in support of the sanitation workers who were striking for humane and safe conditions. And as much as I want to believe that some things have changed, I know that how we handle waste and who we consider disposable in our societies, we still have a long ways to go. That was true. That was true then, and we consume more and waste more now than we did in the 1960s. Even still, when we put in a new landfill, it's in an impoverished community or some impoverished rural community, or in the city. I know Pastor Anque is going to talk a little bit about this issue later, but right now in Chicago, people are in a hunger strike to protest, a nonviolent protest to try and keep a waste disposal, a waste processing scrap yard from moving from a white neighborhood to a predominantly community of color, where people are already burdened by pollution. And, those people are saying, we can't eat because our community can't breathe. And that's going on this day. That's going on this day. So, and I'm going to put in a plug. Faith in Place tries to help communities of faith dig deeper into issues like this. We've got a waste toolkit that says, as communities of faith, we have to do better than just putting up a couple of recycling bins and calling it a day. We really need to understand the deeper issues that are under this. And if we're going to have an impact, that's the way it's got to happen.
Great, thank you.
Reverend Arquay,
Go ahead.
Hello? Never mind. Go ahead, Rick.
No, that's fine. No.
Oh, I was going to say, I could remember when I was coming up and growing up, and I go to my grandmother's house, and the jelly jars that she would get, she'd save, and so she used them to either can or she'd use them as cups. We use them as glasses, and people would drink out of them. And if they had dumpsters or whatever that we had that we put on the side of the street, she put a trash liner in it, and she dumped the food in that instead of dumping it in the having single trash liners to take out every time, because it was just too expensive for her. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of things that they did out of scarcity that helped them to survive, but it also cut down their waste.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you there's a lot of impoverished communities or under-resourced communities that are still living the same way today. Mm-hmm. But they are the same ones who have the landfills. Mm-hmm. But they aren't the ones that are contributing to the landfills. Exactly. It's the ones that have plenty that are the ones that are contributing, but they aren't the ones that are suffering from what they're contributing to. Mm. Do you see the greater injustice in that? Mm. And where the greater sin is? Mm. Especially when you have someone like a Dr. Robert Bullard, who would say that 1 in 5 communities of color have landfills in them or next to them. In my neighborhood right now, which was a middle class, predominantly white community, 5 miles away, less than 5 miles away, we've got a concrete field right there. We've got a rail yard right there. The community that sits next to it is under-resourced and sitting there, doesn't even have a government set up, doesn't even have a police system set up. But these people are making money from the land that this community is surrounding.
Mm. Wow.
And so that's the greater injustice. That's what Dr. King saw. Dr. King saw that we doing all the work and carrying all the burden. That's the fight.
Mm-hmm.
That's the fight.
Mm-hmm.
We all ought to be carrying equal burden as long as we're equally contributing. If not, it's not equitable. And if those who do the least harm are suffering the most, we have an inequitable society.
Mm-hmm.
Communities of faith, and especially faith leaders, should be challenged in this time to be speaking up against these things and putting programs together to help to reduce these things. So I'm grateful for a faith in place that can talk about waste reduction, that can show communities of faith that your life impacts the planet, your life impacts people.
Yeah.
And I think that's our greater charge.
Yeah. One of Dr. King's last books, well, actually, not one of them, his last book pen was Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community? And it was just really a reflection of the work that he had already done, but then challenging us to think forward on how do we actually move forward in a society that, when we ask for rights, people pin it as socialist, or when we ask for to be a part of the plan, they'll say, well, we've given you this much, let's not move too fast towards this thing called justice. And so we're constantly faced with the question, how do we move forward? Where do we go from here? Because we clearly have a good ways to go. And I thank God for organizations such as Faith in Place that starts thinking about how do we educate, how do we share the vision of such a pillar like a Dr. Martin Luther King. And I heard you mention Dr. Bullard, and where he helped identify the ills that many of our communities are facing when you think about environmental justice. And they call him the father of environmental justice because of the books he penned and the focus he brought to communities of brown and Black people. When we look around, and you said, like you just said, you can, arms throw away is a landfill or a pollution spilling factory, or something that's affecting our breathing, affecting our well-being, and then you wonder why we have so many comorbidities in our community, because it's almost set up that way. So as we continue moving forward, we see Dr. King reflecting on the hundreds of thousands of people that came out that day to stand for justice, and they came in a unified spirit, and it was whites, Blacks, Asians, so many a rainbow of people that were there that day. And so the great thing about Faith in Place, we look for reaching a great spectrum of people, and so that's a good thing. So I just want to take you through a real quick advocacy. And so advocacy is defined as any action that speaks in favor of, recommends, argues for a cause, supports or defends, or pleads on behalf of others. And Reverend Malcom, we know that you are a true advocate, and you do great advocacy on the national level as well as the state level there in Alabama. Do you have anything to share on advocacy before we move forward?
Well, the only thing I can say is that I don't view what I do as advocacy. I view it as utilizing my prophetic voice. And what I really do is just make noise about what I see. And I think that's, apropos for who we are as a community, or as communities. We make noise about what we see, and the injustices that we see. We raise our prophetic voice
our
and
voices.
make some noise.
Yeah. Absolutely. clearly we must change policies and systems to create the world we want with clean air, clean water, and healthy communities. And so our motto and mine is there's only so much that we can do as individuals in houses of worship. So we have to start raising our voice to bring others into the fight or others into the struggle. And then just making people aware of what the struggle really is, because many people because they don't even know there is a struggle, or they don't know how to get engaged in the struggle. And so elevating our voices to bring people into the fold. So people of faith are a powerful force of change. And you being a preacher, mounting the pulpit on Sunday, we have a bully pulpit that can resonate and reach thousands of people. And now that we're doing it so much more on streaming and on these platforms where people can just jump on their computer and see, we can get the message even further and take it even greater. And so we're doing a few initiatives in Chicagoland or the Illinois land around this advocacy and justice. And so I'm going to flip it to Cindy, Reverend Cindy, I'm sorry, Reverend Cindy, quick, so that we can talk about some of the things that we're doing around advocacy and justice.
Great. Well, I first thing I want to talk about, Katie, you can give me the next slide, I think, is to say that we are maybe not. Not
oh no,
slide,
actually that's fine. We had
yeah,
asked if anyone had any questions at this point, we wanted to pause and let you put your questions inside the chat so that we can grab a hold of those questions and toss them to Reverend Malcom, Reverend Cindy, or
Great.
so if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We want to make sure that your questions are addressed. We don't want this just be us talking to you, talk back to us. As a preacher, I love that. Talk back to me, say amen. So put your questions in the chat and we'll definitely get to them. Okay, Cindy.
I was just going to say, I'll watch the chat, and there have been some comments I want to highlight.
Okay.
Veronica said people that struggle with lack of resources are some of the most devoted environmentalists due to the necessity to survive. There's some amens to that. Yes.
And we link. Okay, wonderful. And then we put a link inside the chat. The in Faith and Place multi-faith environmental curriculum. So you can feel free to jump on that. That toolkit will help you quite a bit. Okay. But if you have any more questions, feel free to put them in the comments and we'll definitely make sure they're addressed before we close out.
Yeah, here's a question that someone said, can Faith and Place build on these conversations within faith communities that are close to each other, like in the same county or the same village? And
as our Green Team outreach coordinator, and then also our statewide coordinator are both on, absolutely. And that's one of the things that, and I'm sorry to jump in because this is really not my question, but I'm excited that someone has mentioned that, because that's one of the things we've been talking about is connecting faith communities together. So we don't want any of our green teams to operate in isolation. We want you to be connected to other green teams of different faith so that you can actually get more work done. And then I'm gonna toss it to Reverend Shep because this is her area of expertise.
I will say that that's a great question. Thanks for that setup. And we at Faith and Place, we are trying to build bridges between our green teams, among our green teams. One of the reasons that that people of faith it's been difficult for them to lead in the environmental justice movement sometimes is because Sunday morning is the most segregated hour in America. That's still true. And so if we don't talk to one another among our faith communities, if we don't reach across the community and find out that we have so much in common with people in our Black churches, in our Jewish congregations, we really have things to offer one another, to give one another, and to share with one another. And there is not a one-way street here. So we really want to encourage our green teams to talk to one another, make sure that you make sure that you are talking about the environmental justice issues in your community and village. Very important. And
it's before we go to the feature slide, it's important for us to do that because even Dr. King made a criticism about saying American whites have an inaccurate or unrealistic view of the ongoing plight of African Americans. The only way we can change that is to actually work together and work together cross-culturally, work together cross-racially, so that we can learn of each other and understand the seriousness of the plight that each of us are going through in this environmental justice struggle. So one of the things that we have done is, which is definitely cross-culturally and cross-racially, is the Future Energy Jobs Act. And in 2016, the Future Energy Jobs Act was passed through community efforts, and it allows Illinois to take important steps towards a clean energy future. And we know that what happened down in Texas affected whites, blacks, Hispanics, straights, gays. It did not matter if you were part of that when the system failed and you were in the cold. You weren't Democrat or Republican. You were just in the cold. And so it's good to have legislation that's starting to think towards a green or a clean energy future. And so the Future Energy Jobs Act does just that. And we have been able to put solar panels on roofs and in environmental justice communities. We've also been able to train people in environmental justice communities to have a future in solar technicians. And so this is a great piece of legislation. And we only want to build on that in Illinois because we have some legislation coming up to even build on the Future Energy Jobs Act as we look at the Clean Energy Jobs Act, which is coming up in actually for review this legislative session. And our governor team has made a pledge that legislation will pass by the end of May that will hopefully get us to a clean energy future. Next slide. So future made the way for lower utility bills for consumers, created energy efficiency programs, and implemented the Solar for All program, which I already mentioned. And matter of fact, that picture there, actually a picture that I snapped when one of the people that I recruited to get solar got their solar installed that day. And so I was there and I was excited about what was happening. So I was just taking a whole lot of pictures, and we just happened to use that picture because we know people personally who have benefited from the clean energy future by getting free solar panels because they live in a community, an environmental justice community. So we're going to take a poll, show you this short video real quick on Solar for All.
At Faith in Place, we empower people of faith to fight climate change. But addressing the problem is not enough. We want to solve it in a way that prioritizes those most affected by climate change's impacts. We want climate justice. That is why we support the Illinois Solar for All program. Traditionally, solar energy is only available for wealthier communities. Illinois Solar for All is designed to give low-wealth communities access to solar energy through incentives that make solar installations affordable and keep electric bills down. The program is designed to serve people historically left out of the solar market: low to moderate income households, people of color, and residents of environmental justice communities which are most impacted by pollution from fossil fuels. A quarter of the program's funds are reserved for projects located in these communities. Illinois Solar for All also trains citizens returning from the justice system or leaving foster care to be solar installers, and then incentivizes solar contractors to hire this new workforce. Access to a solar career can make the difference for someone returning from prison. These jobs provide resources that help build a just economy while increasing resilience to climate change for communities. Learn more about Solar for All and other just climate solutions by reaching out to Faith in Place.
Great. We have a quick poll for you. Are you interested in solar? Would you sign up for power pricing or peak time rewards. If you are, just take this quick poll if you can.
Hey, Pastor Anque,
Yes.
after we look at this poll, our state outreach director, Veronica Kyle's on the phone, and she'd like to have a word.
Absolutely. We're going to pull her in. Mm-hmm.
That'd be great. Thanks. Oh, look at this. A lot of people interested in solar. Wonderful.
Great. Mm-hmm.
And finding out about that's wonderful. That information is going to come to you in a follow-up email. There'll be some links to help you find out more about those, both power smart pricing, peak time rewards, and also the Solar for All program. So thanks for your interest.
Great. If we can go ahead and pull Veronica in real quick, it'll be great. Mm-hmm.
Hi, everyone. Reverend, I wasn't going to be able to sit up here with Reverend Malcom on the call and not say nothing now.
I know that's right.
You know that,
that's
right? John knows that. Dennis, I see some of our friends who've been on other calls. Hello, hello. One of the things I want to get back to this whole reality of Martin Luther King and environmental justice. One of the reasons that Martin Luther King was able to speak about so many things is that he risked going into the other territory. And very often people of faith, we know these are segregated hours, Saturdays and Sundays, however we worship. And I just feel like the whole faith community, the whole environmental community needs to start having what I call field trips to the other side of town.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Start worshiping, start working, start volunteering, start building authentic relationships across the town. We know where the boundaries are. We know where the people that are struggling are. We drive past it every day if we don't live in it, if we're not a product. We hear about the negative things about their community on the news, but rarely do we risk stepping in to the shoes of the other. And King did that, even taking risks when he came to Cairo, Illinois, and Cicero and got hit by rocks. So he took risk on both sides. He stepped into white areas to try to get a connection. And he went into some of the poorest Black areas. And I don't know if Reverend Malcom and others know this, but I'm an Alabama girl, born in Anniston, Alabama, ate red dirt, all of that, right? And Monsanto cesspool is my community. All the homes that I lived in have an X on them because of environmental toxins. And from there to Georgia. And then ultimately to Argyle Gardens, where we are considered the toxic donut, right? This is where I grew up before my family moved away. So I just want to say, we've got to not expect to solve this problem at a distance. We're going to have to rub elbow to elbow, hand to hand, and we praying people of faith, knee to knee. We gotta join forces because there's a sense of urgency that unfortunately a lot of our people on both sides of this thing, the privileged and those who are not, that do not understand that climate change is among us and climate inequity is also there. So I just want to put that there. And then to the solar piece, which Pastor O knows, I love this. We sat at the table together, some of this, making it happen. While my son is not a returning citizen, he is a college educated, went to boarding school. I hate, look, don't hold this against me. With Donald Trump Jr., don't hold this against me now, all right? And one of those parents has sacrificed a lot for my children to be where they needed to be, but found himself as a Black male with a poli-sci major, underemployed and unemployed, took the 10-week solar program that Pastor O and others, we all helped recruit. And now he is making six figures. He's making more than his mama and his daddy doing this solar, right? So how do we then get this in other communities? It's not gonna happen unless we put pressure in the faith community. This is a justice issue to get our legislators. I was on the call, Reverend Malcom, with mayors, Black women from the Black Belt in Georgia. The kids don't even have enough bandwidth with all the tablets that's been given out, right? And then I typed in, I said, let's think about solar. And they were like, oh, we can't get it. So we got to talk about solar for all. It's a justice issue. So I was busting at the seams. I'm through now, but I
No,
had to
that's beautiful.
share
Thank
those.
you, Veronica.
I had to
Of
share
course,
those.
you know we always want to hear from you. Yes, indeed.
So, Sister
Malcolm, you
B,
got something to say?
yeah, I think uh, your issue with solar is not one that we're very familiar with in the South because of our fight with energy. The energy burdens that we face in the South have an actual simple solution: weatherization, selling homes.
Mhm.
But our state legislators and utilities are in bed with each other, and they actively fight against
Mm.
doing anything to improve the lives of people. And when I say of people, I mean it's a statewide and region wide issue. But now, when we look at it on a more micro level, we find out that it's really a racial issue, and those who suffer are often our Black, Brown, Indigenous, and poor white communities. They are the ones who suffer from excessive energy burdens.
Mhm.
And in the South, out of 10 cities, the top 10 cities for worst energy burdens, the South has 7 of them.
Mm.
Uh, and it can be a lot of it can be solved through weatherization. You have people who are living either near or below the poverty line who are paying $500 a month for their utility bills.
Mm.
Something wrong with that picture.
Mhm.
French.
Something wrong with that picture.
Yes,
So
indeed.
so uh, not only do we have a solar issue, but before we can even get to solar, we need policies in place and practical implementation in place that will get us to that point. We can put solar on our homes all day long, but if they're not sealed up properly, then all you're doing is still heating up the outside and cooling down the outside. So we've got to start at level one with us,
Mhm.
and that's really fighting for energy democracy
Right.
and fighting for practical implementations. And shameless plug on my end, we've come up with We Rise, the People's Justice Council, as well as Alabama Interfaith Power and Light, come up with We Rise, which is weatherizing every resident in the Southeast. And what we're doing is we're targeting communities of faith to not only do energy audits and energy efficiency upgrades on their building, but choose at least three homes in the community that you worship in, vulnerable homes, and let's work together to do weatherization on those homes. Let's start a ministry of doing weatherization. My hope and goal personally in this is that we can make weatherization just as sexy as we make food pantries.
Mm. I like that. I like that. Before I
Yeah.
expound on that, we saw there's a question from Robin Lang. Our church has a subcommittee within the stewardship group called the Creation Care Team. I'm wondering what are the best advocacy actions we can take and encourage our members to take. Well, the slide up there, it really answers your question. People of faith can have the power in shaping climate legislation through holding your legislators accountable to climate action. And so when we talk about the steps that we can take, we can promote clean energy, such as the Clean Energy Jobs Act. And that legislation will allow Illinois to move towards an equitable, clean energy future. And so again, we're committed to getting this big piece of legislation passed during this legislative session. When we think about clean energy jobs, moving the state of Illinois towards a clean energy future, a renewable future by 2050, phasing out fossil fuel dependency by 2030, electrification of vehicles by actually changing the way we think about electrification of vehicles, electric fleets for our buses, postal workers, considering using electric vehicles ourselves, putting electric vehicle infrastructure in place so that if we buy electric vehicles, we have a place to charge them. These are the way forward thinking. But the only way we can do that as a congregation, you can put pressure on your legislators to let them know that this is something that you want. And how do we put pressure on our legislators? And I'm gonna toss it to Reverend Shepherd, because she did a great job of helping me with our lobby days. And so when we think about putting pressure on our legislators, Reverend Shepherd, talk about how you mobilized Central Illinois to be a part of our lobby day.
Well, thanks. Yeah, our lobby day is a great opportunity to actually talk to legislators one-on-one, but with your Faithful Citizen workshops, we learn to connect with our legislator even before lobby day. You get to know your legislator and let them know that this is important to you, that clean energy and that energy equity is important to you, energy efficiency is important to you, because you know that the utilities are talking to them. You know that the people who stand to make a buck off of it are talking to them. So you have to let them know that this is important to you from the other side, and that they have people who can help them figure out and do the right thing. So talking to your legislature, getting connected with other people of faith and talking to your legislator is super important, and finding those partners in your community that can benefit and can speak up is vital. And then we get on a bus. I mean, one of the reasons I love that video of the People's March on Washington was because we march on Springfield when it's not COVID times. We get on the bus and meet each other there. So I'm actually looking forward to getting on the bus next time. But in the meantime, we're going to do it virtually, and that's been great too. Please keep checking on the Faith in Place and Faith in Place Action Fund website, because that's a way to get connected with those efforts. That can be very impactful.
Mm-hmm. And then we are advocates for injustice. And one of the things we're fighting against, and I think you mentioned it, Reverend Cindy, I'm gonna ask for you to talk a little more about that, the General Iron situation.
Well, it's just that this waste disposal, this scrapyard, has been in a northern neighborhood in Chicago for a while, and they've decided that they want to move south, and that unfortunately the state government, the state EPA, did not stop them, and now people are from that community, which will be so impacted by the noise and the fumes and the truck traffic. They're speaking to the Chicago, especially the mayor, appealing to the mayor to stop the permit. And they are actually doing a hunger strike. Some of the people are on their 16th day of the hunger strike today. They've had other folks striking in solidarity for 1 to 7 days as well. People putting their bodies on the line. As Dr. King showed us, there is violence in inequity and injustice, and you just have to put yourself in the position where that violence shows itself, where the people put their bodies on the line, and then people have to confront the moral questions that are underpinning these inequalities. So that's going on right now.
And if you go out there to 116th Avenue O, you'll realize that they already have a recycling plant already operating. And so they're looking at doubling the pollution, doubling the traffic, and affecting that community. On one side, it's actually Torrance Avenue, which is not residential, but on the other side is a whole subdivision of beautiful homes that are being affected by this constant pollution, constant vehicles, heavy trucks coming in and out, and they want to double that activity, which is a shame. And so we really want to fight against this move by General Iron. So you'll hear more about that as we continue to pressure our mayor to make sure that that does not happen. So when we think about the most effective advocacy is done around issues you are passionate about. And so that's why we had Reverend Malcom on, because we know he's passionate about issues of justice, and he would be able to speak eloquently about that. But there are, you may find that you are super passionate about, that you want to get involved in. It might not be just the Clean Energy Jobs Act. It might be lead in water, or might be moratoriums on utility shutoffs. Maybe you're passionate about COVID vaccines in your community. Whatever you're passionate about, you have an opportunity to raise your voice. And I like how Reverend Malcom said he's not an advocate. He just raises his voice towards the issues that are important to him. And that's what advocacy is all about. You're raising your voice. The most effective advocacy is done around issues you're passionate about. And I think we're getting near our end, but tomorrow we're having a water justice conversation at 6 p.m. and the link should be in your chat. We want you to be a part of our water justice conversation. Again, water is a fundamental right. Clean water is a fundamental right. We should not have to worry about our water being cut off, nor should we have to worry about lead in water. And so tomorrow we will have a conversation around that. Our program director, and also one who's been instrumental in our water curriculum, Ramat Bell, will be leading that with our comms coordinator, Katie Maxwell. And so we encourage you to sign up for that tomorrow. And I'll be on also, just sitting in the background. And then your house of worship can begin advocating through signing our climate petition, and that's inside your chat also. Click on that and sign our petition. Those petitions are important because we get them straight to the governor and let the governor know that people of faith are interested in the same things that we talked about here: clean energy, maybe water justice, again, maybe general iron, these things that have come to our attention. We want you to be a part of that and have your voice included. And so before we go to the end, I'm going to pull my special guest back in and have some comments, and then we'll finalize with what can you and your house of worship do to be the drum majors for justice. And Reverend Malcom, if you can help us with that question, because I know you not only are pastor, but you're head of an organization that works around environmental justice. So what can you and your house of worship do to be drum majors for environmental justice?
I think I just laid out with We Rise a couple of practical implementations, excuse me. But I also want to make sure that I hone in on something that you also spoke about, Reb, and that we deal with advocacy as well. Our voices are some of the most powerful voices in the nation. And it's because of the context by which we come from. And so using that and using our presence, as well as not just advocating for, but getting involved to help shape policy. If we can get people of faith to utilize their expertise along with their faith, if we can get them to do that to help shape policy, I guarantee you a lot of this fight would be null and void, because it would have been headed off from the very beginning. One of the things that we wrestle with as far as our society is concerned is that we don't get involved in our political and policy spaces as citizens, when that is our very right. And the reality is, those who sit in seats that we say seats of power aren't really seats of power. They're supposed to be seats of servanthood. The people have the power. The people have the power. And if we can all look at collective action, we can change things overnight. But we've got to use our voice to do so. There are no big I's and no little U's. Your voice counts.
That's great. Amen there. Wonderful. Well, we're coming towards near the end of our wonderful hour of engagement. And so I'm going to flip it to Reverend Shepherd to close us out and give us the information there and some final words from you, Reverend Shepherd.
Thank you so much, Pastor Scott. So great to have you all here this day. So thankful to our guest, Reverend Malcom, for his words of wisdom and his perspective. Just so important that we all listen to one another and hear what other people's experience is, what the issues are from their point of view, because it's when we act together that we make an impact. And so I'm very encouraged that we had this time to be together and this space to share these concerns. I want to encourage everyone to get involved in public policy and get involved, because together we can come up with climate solutions.
Great. And again, thank you so much for each of you joining us for this hour. And Reverend Malcom, I owe you, man. You're such a wonderful guy. Again, just keep up all of that great work you're doing down there in Alabama. And the people really are encouraged by your work. So thank you for what you do. And we really believe that you will be making a tremendous difference in that community. And pray for us up here as we continue the fight and the struggle about getting the word out around justice, environmental justice, and then how we connect it to the dream. And so thank you again, everyone. And I hope you had a great time. If you want to reach us, our information is on the screen. Please utilize our email addresses or our telephone numbers to connect with us. Visit our websites. Encourage you to look at our new revamped websites, actually, both for the Faith in Place Action Fund.org as well as the faithinplace.org websites. You can connect to us. We have a lot of upcoming events, and you will find them very interesting. And hopefully I'll see you tomorrow on the Water Justice webinar. Until then, God bless and keep each and every one of you is my prayer. Have a good day. Bye now.